Welcome to Women Winning Divorce with your host, Heather Quick.
Welcome to Women Winning Divorce, where we talk about all family law issues and how they impact women. I'm Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. Today, we are so fortunate to be joined by my fellow attorney and law partner, Anna Durstein. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I know you very well, but for our listeners, give them a little insight into who you are and why you do what you do.
Right. Yes, of course. So I've always wanted to do divorce law for as long as I can remember. I've always wanted to be a divorce attorney specifically. I feel like it's the only field where you can actually see what you're doing to help a client. You can see it from the beginning to the end. So it's something that I've always wanted to do. I've only focused my entire law career on family law. Even before I became a licensed attorney, I interned with family law offices. I interned with judges. So this is something that I've always wanted to do. And here I'm a partner and attorney. So I represent clients. I help the other attorneys here too, and our office strategize and reach our clients' goals.
Well, we are so happy to have you here today because as we begin this new year with these episodes, we are going to be interviewing other female attorneys, and it's going to hopefully provide for great discussion and different insight from different points of view. And today we are discussing when is enough enough. So many women ask me, how do I know when it's time to end my marriage? And how do I know that I go forward? And I can't always give them just an easy one answer. So it's just a common question.
And I agree. I get that all the time as well. There really isn't just one answer. There isn't just something that is, here it is, it's time. It definitely is a big decision, and it comes up a lot.
Exactly. So, let's start out by talking about when it's time to leave. And surprisingly, I have found in my experience, it isn't some major blow up that's the deciding factor to leave. There isn't that one sign or that epiphany when you wake up that morning and say, it's time to go. I think in most cases, it's an accumulation of a lot of little things. We discussed last year, just based on statistics, that on average, most women spend about 3 to 4 years thinking about it before they really are able to then pull the trigger, so to say, and move forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I completely agree. I think a lot of women think about divorces for a very long time before they pull the trigger. However, I do know that whenever they are done with their marriage, they are done and there's no changing their mind and going back. I feel like once they do take that next step, they know that they always know that it's the right decision and they move forward with it. And it is a lot of times also it's harder too to decide if you're going to move forward with it. If your husband is, he's a good guy, he's a good dad, there's nothing that is, they feel like they're not leaving for a valid reason because they don't love them anymore. They just don't have anything in common anymore. I feel like it's a lot of guilt that they just don't want to leave because of that. I feel like they are, like you said, they're waiting for that one thing, the big blowout, that this is the moment that I decided I'm no longer going to be married. But I just don't think that happens every time.
I agree with you 100% because, many circumstances, on paper or, certainly always from the outside looking in, because we never really know what's going on with people and with who they are. But, it may be like, hey, this is not a bad person, right? And so there is, I think, a belief but on women and maybe, even men, oh my gosh, I'm being so selfish. I'm just unhappy. And whether or not, or unfulfilled, is that a reason for divorce? But in a lot of ways, I think that can be a very valid reason for divorce. I think women tend to set the bar low as far as what they'll accept. You may start off high, but then you just keep making exceptions and excuses. You don't really want to rock the boat. And I think that so much more goes into it when, just to say, well, I'm not happy, but then really, how do the two of you interact? What are you teaching your children, per se,
Right.
Or what's going on within you as far as when you're just maybe even just in a partnership situation, but you really are wanting more of a marriage.
Right. And you're right. I think you hit right on the dot there. I mean, I think women, they just don't sometimes trust their decision-making abilities. I think that a lot of times they don't want to break up a family. And like we kind of said, when there isn't like a specific reason to do it, I think like they feel like they're more concerned about what is everyone else going to think? Look at this guy. Everybody loves my husband. They think he's a wonderful dad. He's a wonderful coach or whatever it may be. So then they end up putting essentially other people's happiness before their own, because again, it's not just this one thing that is making them want a divorce.
Yes. And I think when you talk about the two, women tend to be, more pleasers. And I think we see that across the board, and in a way that they put themselves last.
Right.
So they're putting everybody else, and it could be, the husband, the extended family, your own children, like just what everybody else thinks versus maybe really their own value. I think it comes down to like, what do they value within themselves and who they want to show up as. And, when you're showing up as half, in half a relationship, but you're really not doing anything in that relationship, and it's not, growing you or your spouse, it's
right.
really a drain on everything.
I agree. No, I completely agree. It is. It's just, you come into this routine that you're only doing it for somebody else. You can't be happy in something like that. And sometimes it's unlikely to change. That's the bigger problem in this, right? It's unlikely to just change.
Right. And I think sometimes there is that's what they're looking for. What else can I do in this relationship that will fix it or change it? Right. But yet some things aren't fixable. And I mean, how many times have you met with women or helped women and they've tried counseling?
Tons. I mean, I feel like almost everybody that has come to me has either tried it or has asked for it in the marriage. And, the husband doesn't want to do it, or they've tried it and it just hasn't worked. I mean, I've had numerous clients have come to me that the counselors have even probably told them, like, you probably just need to, this isn't just going to work anymore, because it just isn't.
Right. And, speaking of counseling, because I think that, if you're only doing the one-sided counseling, I mean, not that there's a downside to that, because you're probably really helping yourself and getting clarity, but that doesn't in and of itself really fix a marriage, does it?
Agreed. No, it doesn't. If both people are not there to do the exact same thing, and the only reason that the other person's there is because they want to, not have a divorce being filed against them, they don't want to leave the house or something just very basic like that, that it's not going to work. You have to have two people really participate and both want the counseling to lead to something. Because you could simply just continue to be unhappy in your marriage, but you're not the same person. You could just change, you grow, your interests have changed, the kids are gone, you might just not be compatible anymore. And that happens all the time.
I think I see that certainly with more often longer marriages, right? Where they're like, all of a sudden we were a couple, but yet kind of each on our own path.
Mm-hmm.
And then it almost is, let's say, not that, we talked about not that the one day, there's this flashing sign, but all of a sudden you're like, do I even have anything in common with this person anymore?
Yeah, no, it's true. It is. And it's a lot of times, like you say, it's just the busy schedules, right? Kids, activities, school, extracurricular, doctors, all of these things that kind of happen. You just kind of forget, why were you married in the first place? Do you, are you with this person? Are you happy? And like you said, you're right. Like, and a lot of it does kind of come out with once the kids are gone, so then you kind of realize you sit back and you're just like, what am I doing? Am I actually happy? And again, there comes the guilt. Like, why am I, this is, he's a good dad. He was such a good husband. He provided for the family. It's like, why, that's where the guilt comes in. And then it's very difficult for somebody to then pull the trigger after that.
I think so. And, a lot of times what I think happens, because, we know, obviously, when we're meeting with all these clients and women over the years, that clearly the other person has to know, right? Like, it's not working. It's not working. It's not that you're the only one who knows something's not going right here.
Yeah. And you think that, but I mean, like, I feel like sometimes it is a shock, to the other side whenever the, client of ours decides to actually take that step, because again, there wasn't just one thing, right? It wasn't a big blow up. It was just a numerous little things that kind of added up for our client to say, I'm not happy. I want to be happy. And you know what? Their husband deserves to be happy, too, I guess, so it's just, it comes to that is when you're in this kind of stagnant relationship part of it, are you even, you have to ask yourself, are you happy? Are you happy with this person the same way you were happy with them 30 years ago, 20 years ago? Are you still the same happy? And you have to remember that. And I think people forget and they just like keep going and just doing life.
Yeah. And, I know that sometimes and it can be so many things because, sometimes it's like, you're never here. Like you're working, you're really married to your career, not the people that, are here in your life that you say you're working for, but you're missing everything. And I know that many women, they feel like they're a single mom. And it's just like, I feel like I'm going through everything every day just by myself. Yet,
yes,
I want more because we're supposed to be in a relationship, maybe even just conversation or something that helps them through that. I think that sometimes can be a big thing. And the other side does tend to be shocked.
Right. Again, it's not one thing, right? It's something that's happened over time. There's the loss of intimacy, the loss of friendship, it's, we talked about earlier, a lot of women, they just don't want to rock the boat. They just kind of want to, they just want to keep it together for the family. They don't want to break the family up. They want to do it for somebody else. And in that you lose the sight of yourself and you lose your own happiness. You don't have that anymore.
And, on the reverse, because I know we have both in our career met with women and they're shocked. Yeah. Because they thought they were checking all the boxes and they were doing all the things that they were supposed to do to be a good wife and in a marriage. And, their husbands decided, nope, I'm done too.
That's true. And it's the same thing. It goes both ways, right? It's something, my clients would say, like, nothing happened. I'm like, we didn't have a fight. We didn't lose something. We didn't, nothing, he didn't cheat on me. Neither one of us cheated on each other. He just doesn't want to be with me anymore. And I don't know why, and it sometimes it's hard. It is very hard it's very hard to come to terms with that too, from both perspectives. It could be very hard to come to terms with it because, everybody wants to look for a reason. Everybody wants to know why, what is it specifically that happened? And sometimes there just isn't one. It's there, and they might never know one. And that's hard too. I definitely understand. That could be very hard to accept.
I think so. And, within that, our roles as attorneys, but, that's why they call us guest counselors, especially in the area of family law. But, many times when it is that, where our client is the one who is caught off guard, initially, and really didn't expect it because they thought things may not have been like they were when they were first married, but good isn't good enough. And, their husband's like, I don't want to be married to you anymore. And, like we talked about, that is of course really difficult. And I know I've had that conversation many times over the years as far as, well, don't you deserve better?
Right.
Really, don't you deserve better to have somebody who really wants to be with you and wants to continue, as hurtful as this is? You deserve better for that. Right. And maybe somebody who really loves you, respects you, and wants to be with you. And I would say likewise for women who are done, hey, your husband deserves better too. Right. Like, if you're just going through the motions and faking it.
Yeah. And I agree. And it is at the beginning, and I don't disagree. I think it is very difficult to come to terms with it at the beginning, but, at the end, in my experience, at least with my clients, at some point, there is something that does click, and that there's a realization that it is going to be better, and it's okay, that I don't have a specific reason, and that's fine. We had happy years when we did have those happy years, and then going forward, I'm gonna have my own happy years. And they always do.
They really do, don't they? So, all right, well, we're going to be back in just a moment to talk about when you're just not happy some more. All right, Anna. So when you're just not happy, let's talk about that, because I think there's a lot of different people think, oh, well, you're being selfish. And what is happiness? And what do you think about that?
I think that you could just simply be unhappy in a marriage. I think that happens all the time. I think we touched base on it a little bit earlier too. You're a different person. Once you get married, you're in your 20s or 30s, and then you have children, and then you're a mother. You're a completely different person than you were when you were at the time that you got married. And then your children go to college, and then you're a completely different person at that point, because now you have an empty nest than you were when you had the children. It's just, things just change. You can just simply be unhappy. It just happens.
Which brings me, recently in the news, there was an article about Drew Barrymore who said exactly that. Like,
Right.
The confusing part of her divorce. I think she's like, nothing went wrong per se, but did you read that?
I did. Yeah, no, I did. And that's exactly it. She said, and there wasn't a huge, a scandal in the news. Somebody cheated. Oh, look at Drew Barrymore walking around with some other man or her husband. It was just, nothing was wrong. It was, I think she described it as being, it was just very clean. It was just like, nothing was wrong. They just both weren't happy. And I think and she said she was confused. It was because it is confusing. Like we talked about, it's like, well, what do you mean you're just not happy? Why? It doesn't have to be something very specific. It could be a multitude of numerous reasons put together. But yeah, I did. That was a big one compared to any other divorces you see in the news, right? It was a very different type of, it is a different type of read for what's going on in the divorce realm with the celebrities.
Absolutely. And, I think that, I found it to be interesting and so relatable for people, because there wasn't one specific thing, but they both knew it wasn't working, and they both tried. Yeah. And then it was still quite devastating for her afterwards. Even though it wasn't, a traumatic affair or some kind of criminal thing, she just really had a hard time afterwards, because basically it's the end of a dream for so many people.
It's true. And it is, right? You get married, you have a dream. You've always dreamt that you were going to have this home, these types of children, where you're going to live, the type of work you're going to do. And divorce is the end of that. It is. It's so, even if you are unhappy in your marriage, it doesn't mean that you're happy to, to go through the divorce process. It doesn't equate to that. It's just that once you realize that you're unhappy in your marriage and you start putting yourself first, that's all that is you put your happiness first. It doesn't mean, that, again, this person that you're divorcing is the worst person in the world and there's something has to be wrong with them. You're just putting yourself first. You're just making yourself happy. And again, even though there is that struggle, I think she did talk about the struggle, but she also talked about how amazing she's doing now and how amazing her co-parenting relationship is with her former husband. Because that's the thing you should do. You should do it before there is something that probably could blow up and things like that, where you could ruin that for your future.
Right.
It works.
And I think as well, that I think when you stay too long, which we are going to get to, resentment builds, anger builds, and then it's not always as easy and amicable to split, because you're both trying to make it work, but it's not. And so then you many times go outside the marriage, or then just ignore the family, try to be away as much as possible with work. And so, really, it's not even putting a Band-Aid on, it's just looking the other way. But then those other things then create more havoc eventually on the marriage than divorce. and one of the things that when you were just talking about it, I think that it's just like when we're on the airplane and, when the oxygen mask comes down, you have to put it on yourself first in order to help somebody else. And I know, I think that happiness is one word, but I really think it's more about being fulfilled, because when we are truly fulfilled, in living what should be our purpose in life and living our best self, it really means we have a lot to offer everyone else. Right.
Right.
And when you are fulfilled in your marriage and in that relationship, you have more to give your children. You have more to give your extended family, your community, or at your job, your profession. And isn't that what we should all be doing? Looking to how do we bring our best selves every day?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. You're right. I mean, you can't, if you're not being your true self with your partner that you're with 24, you're in your home with this person every day. How can you be true in all your other aspects of life? Like you said, with work, with your kids, like with your family, how can you really fully be there for them if you're not fulfilling yourself? And if you're not happy yourself, you just can't.
And I think also it really is, and this just has more to do when you have children. When you don't have children, all right, it's just two adults. We know this, that, it is going to be more of a business transaction with the divorce, but within that home, how you operate as a couple doesn't have as lasting impact as it does when you have children. Mm-hmm. And, I know so many women tell themselves, well, I'm staying together for the kids, right? That's why we're staying married. But yet, what are you showing your children? Right. And don't you have, what do you think? Don't you have more of an obligation just to stay married to be married, or to show your children what a healthy, fulfilling relationship looks like? What do you
I agree. I completely agree. Children, they're kids, but they're smart. They pick up on that. They pick up if mom and dad don't talk, right? They pick up, so my client, they're like, we never fight in front of the kids. And I'm like, that doesn't mean that they don't know that something is going on. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Once again, you don't have to have very overt types of acts to not be happy. The kids are smart. They pick up on that. So they can definitely see whether or not their mom and dad are happy, whether or not their mom take time to, talk to each other and laugh together and, hug each other, or anything just small as minimal as sitting next to each other on the couch, just, they notice things like that. The kids, they pick up on that. They know that. And yes, they definitely, I feel like absolutely they owe duty to their kids, and staying together for the kids. It never is the right answer. It never is.
It really isn't. It's not, because it doesn't work, right? No. It just, everybody ends up suffering, I think. And so often you hear afterwards, right? Not in the beginning of it, but that their children will then share things, whether it's once they're older or later, yeah, I can't believe it took you this long, or, whatever's going on. But kids are perceptive. They're living in the same house as you. So they pick up on it, right?
Oh yeah. No, I've had clients absolutely in those same exact situations, parents going through a divorce, and like, mommy, I'm so happy, you're doing this. Or I've had cases before divorce even begun. I've had the children come to my clients to say, mommy, I think you should get a divorce. Why don't you get a divorce from dad? He's not very nice, or whatever it could be. And that's just heartbreaking that children, they see that, and you're still in this relationship, and you're not leaving because of possibly a fantasy that you might have to help make everybody else happy, or thinking that you're doing it for your kids, but it's not. Children, more often than not, I've never had a client that I can think of, and I'm thinking now too, that have had come back to mom and dad and been like, you guys should have stayed together. And again, goes back to, you do it sooner before you start really hating each other, and before you start really, really having a lot of contention between yourselves, because then your co-parenting relationship is going to be so much better too.
Yeah. And I think also what we talked about, what you mentioned earlier is, you may have married in your 20s, and even if you're in your 30s, we as humans are meant to evolve and grow and have different interests. And, when you aren't growing together with your spouse, it doesn't really have to take 20 years. It can take a shorter amount of time, but you also may grow and, have new interests and learn new things. And he may just not like you as much anymore either. So doesn't want to spend as much time with you, right?
Right. And that's a good question to ask yourself in those types of situations is, if you met your husband today, would you be with him? Would you date him? Would you, love him? Would you, you might love him always, right? I mean, that's going to be something you gave you children, you guys had a life together. You might always love him for the person he was to you at some point, but do you like him? That's a really important question to ask yourself. Do you like him now?
Well, and how about this question? Do you like who you are now with this person? Because, and that takes some self-reflection. I know not everybody likes to ask those questions and, when they're going through the divorce and looking at their part, but, are you your best self?
Right.
I think that's a good question.
Very good. Yeah, very good. It's very important. Again, and it is, like you said, self-reflection is very hard, but it's important when you're trying to make a decision on whether or not this is the person for you in this moment of your life. And it's okay if the answer is no.
I think so. I think that at the end of the day, it's really being honest with yourself first, because, there's so many coping mechanisms that all of us as humans have that, can be very effective. And I think, we see that often in divorce, that really denial as far as what's truly going on can be a nice place to hang out for a while when you're married, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. No. And they do. I mean, because that's easier. It is. It's just easier, but it's not better.
It's easier in the short run. I think it eventually catches up with you. And then when you see that divorce in a marriage that really probably the divorce should happen, 10 years earlier, there's a lot more animosity, isn't there?
Yeah, always. That's what I was saying earlier too. It's just, you wait too long because then you actually are waiting for that moment where you're looking for something. And then in that moment, you really, really don't like that person. And there is a reason. And then now you're really hung up on that reason. And now you have children. And now how are you going to co-parent with somebody that you're divorcing because you absolutely hate them? It absolutely is worse.
Yeah, I think so that, within a relationships are complicated. And, how to navigate. And when you're at that point that you're done, I think that also what happens many times is one person gets to that decision before the other, right? But they haven't really communicated it. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where that whole surprise or, when did this happen? That, like we talked about, it's almost like been building up, it's not just that you leave your towels on the floor. I mean, that's not the end all main reason. I mean, it could be, but usually there's a lot more, right, underneath that does it. And I think we touched on it maybe in the beginning, but it's the communication. I think at the end of the day, the majority of the relationships, they don't make it because somewhere along the way, there was just a total break in communication, and they either didn't have the skills or the desire to really try to bridge that and figure out, hey, now that we've been, the way we communicated when we first got married isn't really as effective anymore, because now we have, all these other moving parts in our marriage, and people have got to adapt and grow and find new ways, right, to connect and communicate.
Right. And it goes back again, would you be with this person today if you met him the same way he is today? Would you be with that person?
Anna, after the break, we're going to talk about why women wait so long and what we've learned about that and how to help women maybe thinking about, why are they waiting so long? All right, we're back. And now, let's dive in a little bit into why women wait so long. Because in the beginning of the show, I mentioned that, statistically, a woman thinks about divorce for 4 years before doing anything. And I know listeners may be thinking, why so long? But I'll tell you, before I had done the research on those statistics, I thought it was really like 10 years. And that was just based on, my experience with most women, in this practice. It would be talking about how they wish they had done it earlier and they really kind of knew, at one point, but then there was this lag. And, I know that, and I do believe this, even as a divorce attorney, I am extremely optimistic, but I believe everybody gets married hoping it's going to last forever, right? No one gets married thinking they're then going to get divorced, but just most people don't. And even the most amicable divorces are hard. It can be one of the hardest things that you'll go through in your life because it is the death of a relationship. So there is, that process. And just like, what Drew Barrymore said about her divorce, how she had a rough time afterwards, even though she knew it was the right thing. It was very amicable, but then she really struggled afterwards and has come out of it. And I think it's helpful that she's talked about that for so many women, because that is, something that can definitely happen. It's not really that avoidable, but why, in your experience, Anna, why do women wait so long?
I mean, I found that they think of everything and they'll do everything to avoid it. Again, I think it comes back to a lot of, well, we have to wait. It's especially the ones with the kids, like the ones that I'm talking about. I'm going to wait until after their winter break. I'll have more time to be able to put paperwork together. Well, now it's the summertime. I want to get through the summer. I want to get through the holidays. It's one thing after another. I think they just put up with a lot of things and just to avoid it. I think it's, well, right now he's traveling all the time, so it's going to be hard. He's not going to be here. It's easy for me because he's not here actually. And, it's fine. I'm okay. So it keeps going back to them just not putting themselves first. It's just putting everybody else first and not putting their happiness first, and avoiding it just because in the situations where there's nothing so overtly wrong, we'll just avoid it. It's easier.
Now, what do you think about this? Because I think there are certainly examples that, women who maybe try to change themselves, right, to be enough for their husband. Well, maybe if I were thinner, we'd go out more. If I cooked better, more adventurous. It could be everything, funnier, whatever maybe their husband complains about, and or whatever they think. I think that there is a lot of unrealistic expectations and or beliefs out there just for everybody. I mean, I limit any and all time on my social media because I find myself just amazed at, the pictures and things that people put up there. And I think, wow, that is so everybody's always got hair and makeup and everybody looks so happy. And, it can really, if you allow it, certainly the statistics and studies will show it can affect you in a negative way. Because let's say you're not happy in a relationship, things just aren't working. And basically you're just not happy with yourself and who you are in that relationship. And I think that would be my perspective, right? Because it's nobody's job to make you happy. Yeah. And I think many times we do think that, you get married, it is your job. Well, it's really not. It's your job. You're in control of your own happiness. Mm-hmm. However, you're not your best self with this person. So that's where a lot of that self-reflection, I think, has to come from. So maybe, I don't think it's terrible to, I'm not saying change yourself, but maybe that where you are looking at, well, who am I? And, that's why maybe it takes so long to trying to figure out who you are and who you want to be in this marriage.
And that's true. I mean, sometimes it doesn't happen immediately. So, I mean, some people can still obviously they do. They still stay in unhappy marriages for a very, very long time before they make that decision. And it could be a multitude of reasons, and like you said, so one of the things you said is that, should I be thinner? Should I work out more? And then, I have a client who does start taking care of herself. And then she realizes that she is happier by doing that. And now her husband is making comments, well, like, who are you spending time with? Well, you're never here. Now you do all of this. Now they have separate interests or something like that. And maybe that is a little bit of a wake up call for somebody. But again, it's once you take care of yourself, you realize also whether or not your spouse, your partner, your person is there for you. Are they supportive of these things? Are they backing you up on your decisions? Or are they complaining about every single thing that you're doing and not necessarily fighting with you, but are they even being supportive of you as a person, as you grow? Are they being supportive?
Right. Because they, that's not what we all have expectations, beliefs surrounding the person we married and who they're going to be. And maybe they don't rise to what we thought they were going to be, or they just stay who they were. Or they do change. You marry let's say you marry somebody and they're just, a high-powered executive. And then all of a sudden they wake up one day and say, you know what, I really hate this job, hate the person this makes me. I want to be a school teacher. And that will impact, of course, all areas of your life, and time as well as finances. And many times you're just not on the same page as your spouse. And I would bet, if that's an extreme decision, but that happens. People do make life altering changes in their careers, and then that changes their perspective on life and really affects the whole family. And if your spouse isn't with you on that can create a lot of problems, right? Because now they're wait, now I'm married to this person, but this isn't who I thought I was marrying. I thought I was marrying, this executive who traveled. What that just brings me into, when the pandemic hit a couple years ago, and I think that we did see a lot of divorce rates rise. And a lot of that was because, people had their roles, their life, and their patterns. Well, then, of course, everything got disrupted. And so for couples whose marriage functioned very well when one spouse was traveling a lot, that impacted a lot of marriages in a negative way, because they're I don't really want to be around you 7 days a week.
Right.
I was doing too.
Yeah. And I mean, and I agree that definitely changed for us. We saw a lot of that happening, but and that goes back to, you've been unhappy for a very long time. That person has been unhappy for a very long time, but they have just dealt with it. They did everything they could to avoid going through the divorce because it was easy. He's not home. It's fine. It's okay. I can deal with him being home, 10 days of the month. It's fine. But that's a big wake up call for those women too. It's that you were never okay. You just did it to avoid it, and it didn't help anything, because then at that point, now you're really stuck together in the same household without any sort of, division at all whatsoever, because now he's not traveling for his work whenever he was stuck during the pandemic. It didn't help anybody. It really didn't. So it's, you cannot avoid it. You cannot keep avoiding something like that. You have to think, if you're happy and if this marriage makes you happy.
Right. And I think that it is really about recognizing, hey, what components of this marriage are working and what aren't, and why? Who's, not that there's a person to blame, but something's missing. And then you have something like the pandemic, which then it just all opens up, and then you're yeah, this isn't been working, because any stressor in life, whatever that may be, and we all know they happen all the time, change and stressors of whether it's the economy, your job, your kids, anything that rocks the boat when it's already really on, a pretty weak foundation, it just crumbles because you can't deal with it. You're that's the last thing. That's the one thing, I can't deal with this anymore, because now things have changed too much. I don't want to be with you. And then, that's, I think, the result of when you wait so long. Yes. It does become harder in so many ways. It's almost as if the reason you're waiting is because you just don't want it to be so hard. You don't want it to be so financially impactful. You don't know what's going to be ahead, right? You just don't. As someone who's divorcing, it's just like when you get married. You haven't been married to this person before. you don't know what to expect. And after the divorce, so you can have a lot of fears about afterwards. And it's that fear of the unknown and that massive change that I think keeps women from taking action. And they're also looking for reasons. They're looking for a justification that they can tell, the moms at the book club or the friends, or the coworkers. They want a reason that kind of passes the social test that you're just not an awful, selfish person. Because that's what society judging may just say. And they don't know what it's like to be married to your husband. And
they don't.
They don't. Just like we never really know what goes on with others. And that may be the nicest guy in the world, on the neighbor, but you're not married to him. So you don't know what it is. But I think we also it's kind of takes that pleasing further. We just don't want to look bad, right? We don't want to be judged and talked about badly, right? We want to be talked about if they're going to say something nice, but doesn't usually go both ways, right?
Yeah, no, and it's true. I mean, making that decision is hard because then you're the one that filed, which, who files first? What difference does it make? Not going into all that legalese, but, it's like, well, I don't want to be the first one to file. I talked to him. He said, but that's, you're making a choice for yourself. You have to think about that. The longer you wait, the worse situations can get. The longer you wait, the older people are, the worse the economy gets. Things, nobody can predict the future, right? I mean, if everybody would, nobody would get married because then everybody would think they're going to get a divorce and we'd have no jobs, right? But no, I mean, at the end of the day, nobody knows the future. You have to think about now. And I cannot say this enough. Are you happy with yourself? Are you happy with the person you're with? Because if you're not, you can make a change and you can be happy because you deserve to be happy. And so does the person you're with. So do your so do your children. So does your family. Because maybe you're in this type of relationship that he doesn't like your family and you never see your family. I mean, that's you deserve to be happy. So you do what makes you happy, not what makes everybody else happy. Because once you're happy, everybody around you will be happy. I definitely have seen that.
I agree with you 100%. And also, I think, like we talked about with the kids, of course they know what's going on, but you are teaching them that that's what marriage looks like. And I know you've heard me say that, a million times, but you're showing them that is a healthy relationship because that's all as children. That is the primary, relationship that and of course then that's what they're learning from,
right? Yeah, I don't disagree, absolutely. And again, once a husband hears that he wants to go through a divorce or that the wife wants to proceed with a divorce, they always they might want to change. I'll do therapy now, and make a bunch of different promises to change too, but once you internally come with that decision and you make that decision that it's time to move forward with your life and be happy, there really isn't much that's going to stop it. Because at that point, I know my clients, they have tried everything. I've never had a client where I've met with her, I've spoken to her about her life and thought, I wish you would have done that. No, they have done it. They've done it. They have tried it. They have searched other options. They have talked to other people. It's just not possible anymore. And that time, and it's by that time that woman, the woman has come to terms with that. It's impossible to salvage it, I believe too.
Well, I agree. And Anna, I thank you so much for being on the show this week. And it was so great to have that discussion and get your perspective on all of this. So I certainly appreciate it. And we look forward to, I'm sure, having you as a guest again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Women Winning Divorce. We hope you found information to help you navigate your divorce. If you like our show, please take the time to subscribe and provide a 5-star review. If you need more information, please visit our website at womenwinningdivorce.com, where you will find previous episodes and other helpful content. Join us next week as we continue our journey of women winning divorce.
Is your new year still falling flat? You are not alone. This year, millions will be diagnosed with low energy. But Planet Fitness has the cure. Boost your energy with tons of equipment in our clean and spacious clubs for $1 down and $10 a month. No commitment. Cancel anytime. Deal ends January 31st. See Home Club for details.